It's not a fancy equation to get the seed to replant again. And a lot of times I think we're actually growing ourselves out of business, because when we sell the seed to somebody, then they can plant it and the next year they can harvest it themselves and they don't need to buy it from us again. But that's okay, I offer it up, I like that. We grow actually about 700 different species of plants here. I'm not talking about little subspecies differentiations, I'm talking about actual genus and species of plants, about 700 different ones. And so it's a vast job, and we work on it all year round. And this is one of our busiest seasons because we're taking the seed from most of the plants right now. One time Italian visitors came and they saw my basil patch and they wanted to make pesto, and I told them, actually, we're not going to pick the green leaf, we're going to wait until it goes to flower and make seed. And they literally cried in the garden. They were so disappointed, but yeah, that's what we do. We grow things all the way through for the seed. And we think that botanical diversity is important, and we think that to a certain extent it will save the world, because we see that when the environment is diverse, then it's healthy and stable. And when we get too much off on a pinnacle and the diversity disappears and our food and our medicine is based on only a few plants, then it's unstable and unhealthy. So we like to promote that diversity aspect. It's very important. Really believe in it.
So you must be somewhat limited by the climate, though, and what you can grow. Is that right? Or
absolutely. And you know, we use special tricks to try to grow some of the plants that don't really belong here because we love them so much. But the more we have to create the environment for plants that don't really belong here in Southern Oregon, then the more labor we put into it. So we have to really love them a lot in order to, for instance, utilize the southern exposure of the seed house over here and grow wild daga, which is native to South Africa. You know, if we didn't have that southern exposure and that dry sand that we'd put in there with wheelbarrows, then we wouldn't be able to grow it. And so, yeah, there are many, many different medicinal plants, thousands of medicinal plants worldwide, and we can only grow a certain sector of them here. But this particular area in Southern Oregon is actually really, really good for this because we have a long growing season and we have a dry fall for harvesting the seeds. Yeah, so there's good maturity in seeds, and when it comes to picking seeds, it really is all about drying them properly, slowly and properly, so that they can be preserved for a long period of time. Well, I came from a family that was very focused on science. Dinner conversations were all about radioactivity or about new innovations in science. And yet I was really interested in the natural green world, and while my brother was making rock collections and my dad was working as a physician in one of the big hospitals, then I was out in nature collecting little leaves and looking at them, and so I've always had a kind of a focus on seeds, actually, ever since I was a little boy. And I had a typical education, and that now in the herbal world, I'm largely self-taught. So I do a lot of reading, and I do a lot of writing, and I do a lot of listening, both here in the garden in nature, which is really my best teacher, and then also with my friends in herbalism to keep expanding my horizons.
you have some background as an ethnobotanist. Is that true, or is that right?
I studied in school archaeology and anthropology, and I went to East Africa for 3 years and worked there with stones and bones in the later Stone Age. And after 3 years in the basement with putting potsherds together and analyzing obsidian chips, I decided to take a vacation on the coast of Africa and studied the coconut and found it to be much more lively than old stones and bones. And so I did some ethnobotanical studies on the use of the coconut in East Africa. There are over 40 different applications of the coconut in food, housing, medicine, wine.
The whole tree is used, eh?
Absolutely. Even the bark of the tree and the bark of the root, they all have their purpose in medicine. And so that sort of started my passion in working with medicinal plants. I came back to the United States. I started to grow gardens, became a permaculturalist, and focused in on growing diverse gardens of medicinal herbs, and that was the seed, as it were, that started Horizon Herbs. Yeah. This is pleurisy root in seed, Asclepias tuberosa, and this is known as a old-timey medicine, the root, for treating pleurisy, which is inflammation of the lungs, or of the sclera, the serous membrane around the lungs, and is used for treating coughs and this kind of thing. It's a member of the milkweed family, which you can see from where it's very typically dropping its seed on these little pappus hairs, and then they fly off in the wind. So they're kind of wet today. They're not doing much flying. But the way we harvest this is we actually pick the pods and then extract the seed from the pappus in this manner, and we toss the pappus out. And then this seed will further darken and mature in storage, and it's a atypical seed. It actually is an after ripener, so it doesn't germinate well without cold stratification in the first year, but after it's been stored for about a year, then if you plant it, it germinates immediately. So these are the kinds of fine nuances that we discover here in the garden, with lots and lots of trial and error regarding the habits of these different plants. Here's one that's much more mature. It has that nice chocolate brown seed in it. That's perfect. And then you pull it off like this. Pretty much each plant has its own little trick in terms of how you harvest it. The one common denominator is that it's going to be a lot of work. How's that? This is a shade house, a shade structure, and it's important for gardening in southern Oregon, where it's so hot and dry during the summer that a lot of these plants would dry up. For instance, here, this is Ligusticum porteri, a whole bed of it. This is what's known as osha from the high mountains of Colorado, and this is one of our best antiviral herbs for treating upper respiratory complaints. And the plants in nature would be growing underneath parent plants, and they would have protection from the parent plant. But here in simulating nature, we're using the shade cloth to simulate the shade of the parent plant, and then we're getting a very healthy osha seedling. This was, the seed is planted in the fall, it germinates in the spring, and then this is how big the plant is after 1 year of growth. This is also one of the at-risk herbs that's considered to be getting rarer and rarer in its native environment. As housing developments take over native habitat, and also as people harvest more and more of it for medicine, there's less and less of it out there. So we really encourage people to grow their own. The Chinese aconite, futse, and this is actually considered to be somewhat toxic herb unless it's properly prepared in the Chinese tradition, and the preparation renders it less toxic. And this is one of the herbs that's very heating to the system. So in conditions of cold and stasis, then the root actually can be taken, and this increases the circulation and purges fire. It's a very pretty flower, just about done. Here it's making the seed. This is the seed head here.